Hello, Starseeds, and welcome to this episode of Astrology Chats, where we are going to talk all about past life astrology, which is also known as Karmic Astrology. Karmic Astrology believes in and is based in the concept of the cycle of rebirths and that the experiences and decisions of a past life affect the present one, as well as what we chose in this one will impact the next. What my deep, heroic, mushy vision quests have shown me is that this lifetime is actually the lifetime where we break loops from all previous lifetimes. And to help illustrate this point, I'm going to use my familiar and dog son, Wolfie, as a case study. In this presentation, we are going to find out if Wolfie was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart in his past life. In answering this question, we are going to help illustrate the major indicators of the chart, including past life karmas and lessons to be learned in this lifetime. And just for fun, you can also conduct your own natal chart reading with your own familiar and pet. And so, without further ado, let's get started and learn all about past life, aka Karmic Astrology. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Past Life and Karmic Astrology presentation featuring Wolfie and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. First things first, what is past life astrology? We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. And that is an epic quote by none other than Carl Sagan. Past life or karmic astrology helps us to understand what lessons we need to learn in the present incarnation in order to achieve fulfillment or enlightenment. A main aspect that we're going to look at in this particular presentation are the lunar nodes in astrology. The lunar nodes in astrology are not specific points per se, like a luminary, such as the moon itself. Instead, they are more mathematical points based on other items or other aspects in your chart. We are going to look at the North Node, which explains what your purpose is in this lifetime. It's also known as Rahu, or the head of the dragon. And in terms of past life astrology, we're going to specifically look at the South Node, which gives us clues into lessons learned or key themes from our past lifetimes. So the North Node is what you are meant to do in this lifetime, so the head of that dragon, and the South Node is the tail of the dragon, and that is primarily what we're going to focus on in this presentation, because the South Node gives us clues into who we were in the past, what lessons we need to learn from the past, what patterns we need to try to not fall back into, so that we become a complete dragon and not one that is simply chasing his own tail. So as mentioned in the last slide, we are going to do a deep dive of the South Lunar Node, which explains past karmic lessons. And what we're going to look at specifically about this South Lunar Node is the sign of your South Node, as well as the house of your South Node. And by knowing these two items, we're going to be able to derive what the planetary ruler is. To better show this idea of having past life karma, I'm going to be using my familiar, Wolfie, as a case study and his birth chart to help illustrate past life or karmic astrology itself. As you can see here, you can see Wolfie's chart. Wolfie is a Cancer. He was born in June, making him ruled by the moon itself, which is quite fitting with his name being Wolfie. But we're going to focus on the North and South nodes in this chart for the purposes of this presentation. And so, if you can see right here, the North Node is in Libra, right here. And the South Node, opposite to that, is in Aries. The South Node is also located in the 12th house. with the planetary ruler of that house being Pisces. His past life had something to do with Aries, so being self-contained, perhaps something military, maybe he was a little bit selfish or self-involved in his past life. The South Node is also located in the 12th house, and the 12th house is known as the House of Secrets. It's also known as the House of Karmic Debt. If you have planets in the 12th house, that usually means an indicator of some sort of past life or karmic debt or karmic lesson that is going to play out in this specific lifetime. And so in regards to Wolfie's chart, in addition to that South Node being in Aries, we also want to look at the fact that it also sits in the 12th house. In addition to the South Node, we have Uranus, the wild card. This is particularly relevant as it comes to Wolfie maybe being a conduit or being Wolfgang Mozart in his past life because of Uranus. And I'm going to get into why that can be a specific interpretation in just a moment. To recap this little chart, there's so much more to look at, as we know from past astrology chats. But the main thing here in terms of past life or karmic astro, you want to look at the South Node, which you can see here is in Aries, which also is sitting in the 12th house. You also want to look at all other planets or all other aspects that are sitting in that 12th house. And in this case, in Wolfie's case, we also have the planet of Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, co-ruler actually. I'm going to take a moment here to talk a little bit about the 12th house. The 12th house is the darkness before the dawn. It is the house of secrets, the subconscious, and karmic debt. And this is in conjunction with Saturn in some regards. It is also known as the house of purpose. And so if we think of Aries as being the initiator, the first planet, the first sign of the chart, the 12th house is that darkness, that growth, the cocooning before the rebirth or bursting through of self. So now, after that little tangent of 12th house, I'm going to explain why the 12th house is so important in Wolfie's chart in regards to Mozart's chart in just a moment. But for now, let's do a little focus on Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. I highly recommend watching the movie Amadeus. Myself and Kevin watched that movie. I remember when we were younger back in Blockbuster, it was always that movie that our parents would look at and be like, oh my gosh, who wants to watch that? Everyone's just wearing wigs and it just looks so old and boring. It's actually an awesome movie and all about Mozart. And yes, of course, it's a little bit dramatized, but it got me interested in thinking because in the movie, Mozart's wifey calls him Wolfie and just yells out, Wolfie, Wolfie. And so Wolfie, my dog, I call him also Wolfie. And so I was like, you know what? It'd be really interesting to kind of take a look at if it was possible at all that Wolfie perhaps was. So let's take a look. Mozart is an Aquarius. His moon is in Sagittarius, meaning that Mozart was primarily ruled by the higher octave planets of astrology, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They were huge influences on his chart. Now, even more interestingly enough, is the fact that these planets, which were major planetary rulers, influences on his chart, they were not even discovered yet in Mozart's lifetime, meaning that he was primarily misunderstood. And because he was in those higher octave planets, he functioned as a conduit for the subconscious or higher mind and bringing that into this tangible world. And here you can see Mozart's natal chart to the side. It was readily available. You can see that Mozart was used as a case study to study astrology for students. But in this case, in terms of past life, you can see there's actually not a lot of activity in Mozart's 12th house. If you look at his north and south nodes, his south node is actually located in Pisces, which is interesting because, as we mentioned, Pisces does have to do with the house of secrets. And so south node being in Pisces means that he had a past lifetime that primarily had to do with spirituality or something having to do with realities or dimensions that are mystical in nature, and that would explain his ability to use music as a language or a way to communicate that type of reality. The sun is conjunct Saturn. That's something to talk about from a fatalistic quality because Mozart did die at 35 years old, and many astrologers will attribute that to the fact that there's a lot of tension here in Aquarius, where a lot of his planets sit with the sun, Saturn, and Mercury. And Mercury is all about communication and being mercurial, about the mind, but also music, language, memory, and magic are all ruled by Mercury and Hermes. And I think that makes a lot of sense when it comes to Wolfgang being mercurial in nature. He is primarily ruled by those higher octave planets, Uranus being one of them, because Aquarius, we are going into the age of Aquarius, and we have just passed the Lionsgate portal, which is the direct axis opposite Aquarius. He's in Aquarius and ruled primarily by Uranus. And if we go back to Wolfie's chart, his Uranus was in the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of karmic debt or past lessons that need to be learned. And Mozart dying early means that it's likely that either A, he was finished his purpose of what he was meant here to do, and that was to give us beautiful music, those operas, the sense of the divine being here on earth and what music and art is meant to do here. Maybe he did all that and that was it. That spirit had to go to another dimension to do what he had to do. Or there were things left over, lessons that needed to be learned, such as partnership. A lot of Mozart's chart shows a lack of being able to love outside of the work that he does. So it was a matter of this lifetime for him was primarily about his work, his music, and it was all wrapped up into one. There was no break of it. And as such, a candle that burns twice as bright can only burn half as long. And I think that's what happened. And you can kind of see that in the chart itself. And so to the question of, was Wolfie Mozart in a past life? And based on the charts, it is entirely a possibility, and it's primarily based on the activity of the 12th house in Wolfie's chart, as well as Uranus and Aquarius in Wolfgang Mozart's chart. I do think that a higher possibility of Wolfie's past life is likely that he was some sort of military general who in this lifetime needs to learn how to collaborate and cooperate a little bit more, which explains Wolfie's passive nature in this life. But that being said, all things are possible when it comes to interpretation, which is why when it comes to choosing an astrologer or looking into astrology, that you always bring your own lens of interpretation, your own mythos, your own storylines to it, and take everything with a grain of salt. And so, was Wolfie Mozart in a past life? Maybe. Could be. It's entirely possible. I was entirely prepared for it to be like, no, not entirely possible. But there are indicators here, and I hope that this presentation illustrated for you why that it is a possibility. And as per usual, for more magic, you can always contact us by email at kevinrachelz@protonmail.com, as well as our website at sacredsomaalchemy.com, and on Instagram at Sacred Soma Alchemy. We're going to have a Telegram group as well as the Warrior class a little bit more blown out more in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. Okay, Starseeds, that takes us to the conclusion of this particular episode of Astrology Chats, where we talked about past life astrology, aka karmic astrology and how you can use the indicators and ways to look at the natal birth chart to determine past karmic lessons and who you were in a past life. And more importantly, how you can use all of this intel to derive purpose in your mission, in your journey here on this life, in this incarnation. And so, Starseeds, without further ado, I would like to wrap up this episode of Astrology Chats. Sorry it took a little bit long. Happy Lionsgate. We do have a full moon in Aquarius coming up, and so I will be doing a live card pull for that. So stay tuned for the scheduling on that. But until next time, have a beautiful day, evening, wherever you may be.